They don't bite unless I tell them to laugh. What did I do?
Yeah, don't want me yet. That's a good thing. Yeah. I got another purpose in this.
My baby brother.
Like this morning, there was a
milkman. Wait, you were the milkman. I was the milkman at that time.
Yeah, you just got more of your mom than me.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah.
Ask Kevin. Daryl. Did you see me out there? I didn't see you. I had Julie hollering, hooping, hollering at me. Yeah, from up on top of the roof. No. Didn't see Kenny.
Yeah, walk down.
All veterans uncover. We will now Roland Zuelsdorf. Roland is now living his retirement years here in Beaver Dam, but he was born and raised just down the road in Horicon. He is a World War II naval veteran. Roland is the founder of the Horicon Marsh Boat Tours and Guide Service, known today as Blue Heron Tours Incorporated. Roland was an active business leader in Horicon and held several offices in its city government. Roland is a 55-year member of American Legion Post 157 and is the founder member of the American Legion Riders Motorcycle Group. Roland is an active outdoorsman, hunter, and a Beaver Dam conservationist. He is also an active prominent of Veterans Affairs. Roland was chosen for the first honor flight from Wisconsin to visit the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. Roland Zuelsdorf.
Thank you, Commander Bob. First of all, I want to thank my honor guard, my two son-in-laws, Ed Brockner and Cliff Lucky, and especially the Patriot Guard and Legion Riders that accompanied me in the parade. And a word about that parade. a magnificent parade with a wonderful reception as you are giving us here today. Well, first of all, I want you to know that I was not the first person chosen to give these remarks. The veterans will appreciate this. MacArthur's gone, Eisenhower's gone. They went down the list, and finally they settled on me. And you know, an interesting thing, they called me about 30 days ago, and there's nothing like putting a little pressure on you. Call you 30 days before something like this. But it gives you a chance to think about a lot of things and some of the things you've done. But you know, I don't really plan ahead. In fact, I don't even buy green bananas. So, but anyway, again, I am humbled to be here in the presence of our World War II veterans and all of the veterans of the World Wars. I'm going to tell you a story. And this story, ladies and gentlemen, could be told by any veteran, especially those of World War II. Born and raised in Oregon, went to the public schools, and I wasn't the best student, really. Being raised on the marsh and a history and a background of trapping and hunting and fishing, it was very hard for me to sit in that schoolroom and in that, especially the high school class, and not pay attention, thinking more of the outdoors, not realizing that someday that would turn out to be my life's work. But anyway, because I wasn't a good student, I had convinced my mother and dad that I should join the Navy. And I picked the Navy because, and you know, a young man doesn't think of war as something that can cause you trouble. And to me, initially, is those bell-bottom trousers. I had to have me those bell-bottom trousers. Anyway, and as soon as I got out of the boot camp, I got me a set. Also, while in high school, I played the drums in the high school band. So, I joined the Navy. I was a little afraid that I wouldn't be accepted. I weighed 125 pounds, not realizing at that time, in 1943, if they could look in one ear and see light on the other, you were in. So, I didn't have to really be too concerned about whether I'd be accepted or not. Spent 4 weeks at the Great Lakes in the Drum and Bugle Corps, of all things. And my work there was to march the graduates, when they completed their 4 weeks of training, out to the railroad where they would get on the trains and be shipped off to whatever destination they were assigned. Well, it didn't take long, 4 weeks later, and I was one of those that was on the train bound for California, Camp Shoemaker. Perhaps some of you might remember that. Anyway, I had several assignments there, one of which was to be the engineer in a landing craft. This is the one that carried 50 troops. The front door would drop down and the troops would hit the shore. I happened to be on leave, weekend leave, when that assignment was made, so I missed that. And I was assigned to a ship called the Robert E. Callan, a troop transport. And this is when I learned that for every man that was in the front lines with a gun, with a shooting with a firearm, there was 20 people behind them giving them support, 9 of which were Navy veterans like myself. And I'm going to tell you a story about those 9. You think, an example, my work consisted in the refrigerator room. I made the ice and kept the machineries running that kept the coolers going aboard the ship. Also, I was in the evaporators. I made seawater into fresh drinking water and into potable water for showers for 2,000 troops. Then I would have to keep track of all of the numbers, and I worked in the office. Midnight to 4, noon to 4, it was my shift. Anyway, we sailed on a shakedown cruise from San Francisco. We're on our way to the South Pacific, and folks, you don't know And again, veterans, you know what I'm saying. You don't know where you're going. There's all kinds of what they call scuttlebutt. We're going here, we're going there, but you don't know. But as you pass some of the early islands like Guadalcanal, Saipan, Tinian, you start getting the idea of you're getting into some pretty heavy duty service. I went up on the deck the first day out, looked across, and as far as I could see were battleships and carriers, troop transports, destroyers, every imaginable armament you could ever imagine. I didn't know that I was on my way of taking General MacArthur back to the Philippines. Then from there, you're moving forward. You're picking up troops, you're moving forward. Always moving closer and closer to Japan. Some of the places you picked up: Oro Bay, Milne Bay, Finchhaven, getting ready for the landings at Iwo Jima. From there, you go to Guam. You pick up people getting them ready for Okinawa and Ayashima. Islands like Bimini, Inuiatak, Kwajalein, all of those different islands perhaps you have never heard of, but were very, very important in our march towards Japan. Well, finally, we were assigned to go to New Guinea to pick up what was left of the 32nd Division. And these were some of the Green Mountain boys. Perhaps you remember the gentleman in Horicon some time ago, or here in Beaver Dam, who talked about that those people that marched across New Guinea. We picked up what was left of those people, along with wounded nurses, wounded sailors, and we brought them all back to the United States. And my friends, on my 18th birthday, I sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge. All of this had happened to a 17-year-old boy from Horicon. So, and again, I say this because many of you veterans here went through this very, very same thing. So, I was one of the 9 that supported the troops, always moving them and moving on. So, shortly after VJ comes, I'm home. I remember coming home, and the manager at John Deere, Van Brunt at that time, was sitting on the porch waiting for me to come home so I could go to work in the factory, along with many of my friends. And being here, I am so humbled by this memorial, and especially the name, and I know so many, the name of Wally Zegert, who was one of my classmates, and whose name is here on the Wall of Fame. So we came home. We went to work because everything was being set up for peacetime. And I talked about the 9. How about the other 11? Well, my friends, they were your mothers, you veterans. This was your moms and your dads, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, 2 of which are buried behind me in the cemetery. These are the people that really supported us, supported the 9, and supported the man on the front line with the gun. And they made the bandages, and they worked here in the shell factory. They sent gift boxes for 4 years. 4 years. Even today, there are groups of people still supporting our veterans as they fight wars worldwide. But you know, they called us the greatest generation. Well, I know the veterans will join me in saying to your mothers and dads and grandpas and grandpas, welcome. You are now also part of the greatest generation. So, we go back to work. One day, I hear on the radio where there's an honor flight going to Washington. Now, later on, they're going to read the names of the gentlemen that were on the honor flight. So I'm telling this story for them. But in the event you are looking for a speaker, any one of these people would be glad to make an appearance at whatever function and talk about the honor flight. When I heard that announcement, I immediately called Mark Rams over at Juneau and asked to have one of the applications. he said, I'll put it in the mail. I thought, no, I'm going to go and get it. So I went over to Juneau and I picked it up, filled it out, but I didn't take it to Port Washington. I thought I'll give them the overnight. I know they'll get the mail. And about 2 weeks later, I got the call, you've been picked for the honor flight. Times were given, what time we were supposed to muster down at Milwaukee at the airport. 4 o'clock in the morning, we show up at the airport. There's a high school chorus, there's a band, and there's news people there interviewing the veterans prior to boarding the aircraft. It really started to get to me, though. There's 90-some of us on this aircraft. We're heading for Baltimore. As we're backing away from the dock, I looked out, and all of the crew of the baggage handlers and everybody was standing at attention with a salute. And this happened walking down the passageway in the airport where people would come out of the bays and clap and salute as we went by. So, and folks, that was just the beginning. I especially liked the bus ride from Baltimore down to Washington, D.C. because it went through a national wildlife refuge. And while everybody else was visiting with their friends, I'm looking out the window to see if I can see any deer. So I just got never gave up. The memorial itself is a wonderful, wonderful edifice. It's only been open for about 2 years. I don't know how many thousands of us veterans have been there, but this is just a life-altering experience. All the different kiosks and the 4,000 stars, gold stars, representing all of the men that were killed in World War II. And especially the 50 that were killed by machine guns when that trapdoors dropped down. And these young men, 17 to 22 years old, tried to make it onto land and didn't get it. In the first 2 hours at Iwo Jima, we lost 7,000 of our friends. So anyway, then it's a short tour of Washington, D.C. And you know, I thought to myself, we should have a tour guide on that motor coach to tell us what we're seeing. I had been to Washington before, and I recognized some of the buildings. I thought maybe I ought to get up in the front of the bus and grab that microphone and say a few words. Maybe I better not. But one of the interesting things, when we passed the Pentagon, you could see where the aircraft had hit the building because they had cleaned up the side, but you could still see the remains of some smoke. The marble was a little bit different color. Then, of course, the National Cemetery. We didn't stop at the National Cemetery, but we went on to changing of the guard. And I don't know why that changing of guard affected me the way it did. It was just such a moving experience. Then on to the Iwo Jima Memorial. And that was a tough one. Anyway, the trip back to the... and Arby's furnished with box lunches. You imagine 90-some old gentlemen, many of them in wheelchairs, where are you going to feed a bunch like that? I'll tell you another thing, too. And our first concern was, what about restrooms? We've got 90 old men on this plane. What are they going to... And that was no problem. Nor was it any problem at the memorial, or any problem at any time. Anyway, back to the aircraft, and on the way back, they called mail call. And there had packets of mail for each one of the veterans on the plane. And I opened mine up, and they didn't say, "Dear Sir." It said, "Dear Roland." Handwritten messages from the kids in the various schools in Wisconsin. They're thanking us for our service. Well, things like this can rattle your cage somewhat. Anyway, we get back to the airport in Milwaukee, and the announcement came on. We've been together all this long day. Let's stay together now as we go up the passageway and say goodbye then to each one of us, and our day is done. Well, let me tell you, we walk up the passageway, and I'm one of the young ones. At 84 years old, I'm just a kid compared to some of these other people. So we walk up the gangway, and here at the top is a band and 1,500 people 10 o'clock at night, little children with signs all saying, "Welcome home." So after those many long years, there was a welcome home celebration. The tough part came the next day. When I got home, I had a chance to think about this, and my bride of 60 years sitting over there, remember, that was a pretty tough day. Started to settle in. Mark Grimes calls, the veteran service officer. He says, "Rolly, we have an invite to talk to one of the veterans groups in Beaver Dam. Do you think we can make it?" Well, I'll tell you, when he was introducing me, I just thought he'd never get done with the invitation. He was so moved by the whole experience, and for myself as well. So, my friends, that's the story of a little 18-year-old boy from one of your neighboring cities. So, to everybody that assembled here today, I want to say, God bless you, and God bless America. Recognize them and all other veterans, and that was pretty much the focus of my speech. And also, I want to mention the parade. What a magnificent parade. People lined up on both sides of the highway, clapping and waving flags. And I'm going to tell you, Brent, this is a very humbling experience. And I can consider this to be one of the very top things that has happened to me in my lifetime.
Tell us about the honor.
Well, it was a long day. Started at 4 o'clock in the morning with league clubs and reporters and interviews. It went quite rapidly to Baltimore. From there we were transferred by bus to the memorial itself. And that's an inspiring piece of granite. There are all kinds of kiosks where you can meet with other veterans that were serving at the same time. And I don't know how long we were there. We were a couple hours. And from then, of course, a tour of the city and through the cemetery. Iwo Jima